Let's get right to it. Protesters in Sacramento are raising their voices last night, shutting down traffic on the interstate, blocking the entrance to the city arena, calling out that Black Lives Matter after yet another unarmed black man is shot dead by police. A warning, this video may be disturbing to some viewers, and our very own Erica Cobb has the story.
This time, it's 22-year-old Stephen Clark, father of two, engaged to be married, gunned down Sunday night in his own grandparents' backyard. The footage of the shooting has ignited outrage. It shows Clark's final minutes.
Show me your hands! Gun, gun, gun!
6 seconds, 20 rounds, Clark is dead. Only then do police identify themselves.
Hey, can you hear us? Police department, can you hear us?
When they approach the body to arrest him, they find he's unarmed. The only thing in his hands, his cell phone. The officers involved in the shooting have not yet been named. They are now on paid leave. Clark leaves behind his fiancée and his two young boys, Cairo and Aiden.
Oh my God, that's someone's son and he's a father. Sacramento police say they were responding to a call. A man spotted breaking windows, but they have yet to name Clark as that suspect. And his family says their doorbell is broken and he was likely tapping on the back window to get into the garage. It also took 6 minutes for them to administer CPR, and then they did turn off their body cams when they were discussing what had happened with their supervisor.
They didn't administer any to Tamir Rice, so I guess that's a step up. To administer CPR to somebody that you shot 20 times. That's great.
22 times.
I just have a question for you guys. How many times did they shoot Dylan Roof, a kid that had just shot 9 people at church?
0. Yeah.
And actually, they took him to Wendy's before they took him to jail. What about the kid that just killed 17 people in Florida? How many times did they shoot him? He looked like he was in pretty good shape.
0.
Yeah,
0.
That's interesting. Wow.
See, and you're right. Your point is, you know, white privilege. I'm a woman of white privilege. I don't feel like, of course, I support Black Lives Matter. I have so much empathy. This outrages me, but I'd like to hear from, I've never had to fear for my life by a police officer.
Well, you know, like, that's the thing. And privilege is, I once thought that I had privilege. I thought that I had privilege because I was a female. I thought that I had privilege because I was no longer in the area where it might have been most prevalent. But when I was pulled over and absolutely mishandled by Vegas police in the middle of the Strip, I was humiliated.
What was their reasoning?
They thought that my husband was my John. They thought I was a prostitute, and they humiliated me in front of everyone on the Strip. We were walking right behind 2 other couples who happened to be white, doing the same thing they were doing, which was going to get in a cab. And before I could touch the handle of the cab, I was grabbed and separated from my husband and humiliated in front of everyone. So, and at the time, I didn't comply because I thought, I'm not doing anything wrong. And when people say, why don't you just comply? Would you comply if someone's accusing you of doing something and all you're doing is living your life? Like, I thought I had privilege. I know I do not have privilege because after the Sandra Bland thing happened, it was very clear to me.
Yeah.
I always feared for my brother, and I still do. I fear for my sister, and I still do. I fear for any young black person or old black person who's just walking down the street, minding their own business, because these things happen so fast.
And Al, has this, as a black man, have you ever had an encounter where the police?
Yes, I was assaulted by the police in, I would say, the late 90s, 1999, driving home from college. I was assaulted by the police. I was thrown to the ground. When I got home, my mom burst into tears when she saw what I looked like. I had a police officer's gun probably 3.5 inches from my face.
What was the reasoning? What was there? Why did they say?
The guy told me, and actually did a story about this, and it's on YouTube. I'll put the link on my Twitter. But basically, the guy told me to take my wallet out of my pocket, and then told me to stand up out of the car. When I stood up out of the car, I had my wallet in my pocket. His female partner that was on the passenger side thought that my wallet was a gun, screamed that he had a gun. I didn't even know who she was referring to. She withdrew her firearm, put it across the hood of my car, which I had a Camry at the time, so it was like a small car, put it in my face, and then he was so panicked he couldn't even get his gun out of his holster, so he just tackled me on the ground and dragged me to the back of the squad car where they handcuffed me and put me on the ground, you know, where I was spread eagle, you know, with my hands tied behind my back on the side of the highway. What I'm saying is not a big deal. It happens to all my friends. It will happen again. This is the life we live. Every time I get pulled over, I think it's probably a 10–15% chance I'm going to be murdered. It's not shocking what happened to Finlandio Castillo. He informed the officer that he had a gun and was shot with his daughter in the back seat. Nothing happened about that. No, we haven't heard his name. Even when, you know, the school district, the people raised money to wipe out all the lunch debts that all the kids in Finlandio Castillo's school district, that was never mentioned. It's just like these black men are murdered and never mentioned. They show up on T-shirts, but that's about it.
Al, how old were you when you were told by your parents how to go about getting stopped by a police officer?
Probably 14.
And this is the talk that black families have.
Right, but I mean, I'll start earlier with my son. My son's already getting pretty tall. My other son, Ford, who's only 4, is already a big kid. I have a nephew, Kevin, who's 16, and he's already 6'2". And I mean, this is my first thought when I see him is like, I could see Kevin being, there are so many that have been murdered.
Trayvon?
No, keep going. No, not Trayvon Martin. The kid that was shot in the middle of the street for, Brown.
Michael Brown.
Michael Brown. Yeah, he looks so much like my nephew. I could see. You know, anytime like a black kid could be just demonstrative, like I'm not even doing anything. Anytime I see stuff like that, I automatically know what happens. I know what's going to happen because I'm an older black man, so I know how this story ends. You know, people are going to go back and forth about, you know, well, maybe if you guys just complied and stuff like this. Do me a favor, just YouTube college students after like the University of Kentucky wins. Look at how they're allowed to run wild. Look at how they just run around hammered, drunk, climbing on things. Have you ever seen an officer discharge their weapon towards a 20-year-old white girl at Arizona State? I sure as hell haven't. Right. So we know what time it is, and this is just, it's a slow extermination of black men, and it's happening right in front of you, and we just allow things like crack down on marijuana. We use dog whistles like that, and we just, we're getting tough on drugs. Are we? Because most of the poor, indigent white people in this country are strung out on opioids. I haven't seen them going to jail in mass numbers. So why are all these black men in jail for weed when we sit here in Denver and I look at billboards for them advertising yoga and weed things? Now that it's legal, all the people selling weed are white, but none of them are in jail. So how's that happening? And I don't need the applause. Just understand when you see this, when you see what's going on, just understand that when you sit here and you look on Forbes and you see 5 white faces saying the weed business is booming, the weed business has always been booming. It was just booming for brown people, but they put them in jail, and now the weed business is booming for 20-year-old white girls wearing V-neck T-shirts.
Thank you both for sharing your comments, and I think both your stories underscore why Black lives matter.